Hello there, y'all. How are you doing? I still got my Sunday Valentine's jacket on. It's hard to believe, but we're down to the wire here. We only have 2 more weeks. We have chapter 7, or week 7, and then next week, week 8, and we are done. I am probably going to be snowed in for 2 or 3 days here in Memphis. I'm telling you, when Memphis gets 10 inches of snow, it's like getting 8 feet up north. We're going to be shut down. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes this week. Typo in the assignment. Let's get to it. You are supposed to be reading chapter 5 in Long's book. Chapter 5, Oh, for a Thousand Tongues to Sing, the challenge of music. The challenge of music. So make sure you're reading chapter 5. Chapter 7 we read last week. So I probably made that typo. It's on me. But you would get into it and everybody would have emailed me. I'm going to put it in an email to the whole class with this video. So chapter 5 from Long. And then you're going to be in chapter 4 from White. I know that we have not leaned on this book as much. I have advocated that it's important to have it. It's a great reference book. It's kind of the Wikipedia of Christian worship. It's informative and it's very dry. That said, this week you're going to interact with White probably more than you have any other time during the semester. So chapter 4, especially that first half, you're going to want to be familiar with that. So let me kick off. I'm really going to walk through our assignment and then give some thoughts on congregational singing in worship, which is what this week is really all about. White has this quote there early on in the 4th chapter: the chief function of church music is to add a deeper dimension of participation to worship. The chief function of church music is to add a deeper dimension of participation to worship. I think we all live with that trap of worship as something we observe. This was something we talked about on Thursday night, and it was a question that one of y'all brought up directly, and was kind of brought up indirectly by a couple others. How do we do more than have people eavesdrop in as observers of worship? Now, I know we've got COVID, and I made the argument that all online worship in the end is eavesdropping in. We are observers of worship. There is something that is incomplete. It is a supplement. It is a bridge. In some ways, it's kind of holding us all together right now and trying to claw our way towards community, which technology I don't think is a great tool for. I think it can be a tool for passive community, but it can't be a tool for active community. But congregational worship, how do we move congregational singing in the act of worship to something that is more than simply passive observers? And when you're a passive observer, what you become is usually an active critiquer. So passive observers will become active critiquers. And my hunch is, I'm getting on my pastoral soapbox, the people that will complain the most about changes in worship are often those that participate the least. And yeah, I said it, and it also has the added benefit of being true. So your question this week is, the chief function of church music is to add a deeper dimension of participation to worship. Agree or disagree? Pick one. You can't split the difference. I know in so many times in this class, we've all tried to split the difference about which pathway we're choosing for worship. I want you to pick one side of that argument and defend it. Defend it with White's argument in chapter 4. Defend it with Long's very helpful conversation in chapter 5 of his book, Beyond Worship Wars. Pick one side and go one or the other. My argument is yes. I do think the chief function of church music is to add a deeper dimension of participation to worship. Now, sometimes worship is filler. Our worship music is filler. We have a few transition pieces in our worship service where music's playing, and it's playing so that we can get from one spot to the next, someone making their way to the communion table. I think music during communion is helpful. Sometimes it's filler, sometimes it's amazing and reflective, but it's not always something that actively engages the congregation in deeper participation in worship. But I'm looking at songs that we sing, music that invites congregational singing. That's where I really want the center of this conversation to be. And my argument is yes, the function of church music is to add a deeper dimension of participation to worship. You interact with Long, you interact with white. And those are probably going to be the best tools for coming down on the yes side of that argument. But we looked at that book by Will Hoyt, The Spiritual Formation of As If the Church Mattered, as well as A More Profound Alleluia and Leading with the Sermon, which we think of as leading with worship. They may have an argument otherwise, and I'm really open to them. You don't have to agree with me. I can't be any clearer about it. This is just your argument, your side of the aisle on this, and then buttress it with some documentation through the book. That doesn't have to be long. You can give me 2 strong paragraphs, and you answer it. That's just fine. But this gives you a chance to assess the materials, and then all of us come at this from a different perspective. And so I really will value your perspective on that. Second question that we're going to answer is purely subjective. And I get that some of these questions are subjective or rooted in our context. Why does worship through song, the act of congregational singing, why does it seem to have the least participation in worship? Why does this component of worship seem to engage the least amount of people? Why does this component of worship engage the least amount of people? Most people will take communion. Almost everyone will take communion at your church. Most everyone will at least engage in some way in the sermon. And you can be a passive engager of a sermon and still be a beneficiary of that, the same way, more than you would a singing that you choose not to participate in. Let me give you a hokey example. I will watch a Netflix show while I'm also on my phone. And I'll keep up with the show, but I'll also be engaged with my phone. I know I'm a Gen Xer, but in that way, I'm a little younger, and a whole bunch of stuff, I'm really older. But in that, I'm a double screener constantly. I watch a sports game. I reference that I'm a big sports nut. I have a Twitter account that I run for the podcast that I host that's connected, that's an affiliate of CBS Sports. I will watch a game and be on Twitter at the same time. And I will be a passive engagement in one or the other and have both of them kind of going at the same time. But when we think about Christian worship and we think about congregational singing, why does this component of worship seem to be the least engaged? When you think about what people choose to opt into for worship, why do the most people seem to opt out of it when it comes to congregational singing? Why are people not worshiping through song? I know we kind of had that important sidebar on Thursday night of how do you assess the worship life of an individual? That's a tough one. I almost don't want that responsibility. I'm not sure if I'm qualified to answer it for another person. But that said, I will give some critique that I do think that this is a place where people are missing out in the worship of God by their opting out of congregational singing. 2 things kind of fuel that have been on my mind of why that is the case. One is, I don't know that we do music education very well as a culture anymore. I know we have some musicians on this group. You'll probably applaud my statement there. I am not a musician. I am not an arts guy. That said, I don't know how to read music. Most people that come to our church probably don't know how to read music. I think that's a deficiency in our educational system, and I think that is a big contributing factor to the lack of participation through congregational singing. I'll also add this. This is a huge stereotype. I hate dabbling in these things, but I'm going to say it anyway. The leading demographic that chooses to not engage in congregational singing, I guarantee you, are older men. Older men. And in that category, that's going to be me, though I love to sing. My demographic and older tend to opt out of congregational singing. Why is that? Why is that? Let's all kind of take a stab at some collective wisdom. I'm looking forward to learning from you on this as much as anything. So I think our lack of music education as a culture is a contributing factor to people choosing not to participate through congregational singing. Second, I think I've had this experience the last year. I think that instrumental music allows people to not feel as if they have to carry the weight of worship. Let me tell you why I'm thinking that these days. I am attending a seminary for my doctorate at a Church of Christ seminary. Now you might wonder, how did Jeff Mitchell end up, a lifelong disciple, end up at a Church of Christ seminary? 2 reasons. One, it's 2 miles from my house. And second, their curriculum was exactly what I wanted. Their curriculum is leadership development, a lot of stuff in preaching, things I'm really passionate about. That's where I got that Will Hoyt book, was from their resources. I get they're probably more conservative than I am on some issues. I get that, but they've been very generous to me and very welcoming to me. That said, when we go to chapel, and there's like 30 of us in this little chapel, they sing because there's nothing to carry the weight of worship except the people that are present. Church Christ, no organ, no piano, no praise band, no backup tracks, nothing. It's just the vocalists that are there. And I look around and it is 100% participation. Now, granted, these are all, masters and doctoral students. So there's clearly a desire to worship among those folks, you would hope. But, listening to their feedback about where they feel gaps in their worship life, it is not around singing because there's no instrument there to kind of bail them out. There's no instrument there to bail them out. So that's kind of my two takes on why that is. But I want to hear your answer to that question. Why does worship through song seem to have the least amount of participation from the congregation? Those two questions will give us something to think on this week. I'm really looking forward to learning from you all and what you have to say about this. So this is our second to the last week. I've really enjoyed the time that we've had, our 3 Zoom calls, our chance to interact online, and some of the outside resources and speakers that we've had. This has been really good. I'm looking forward to your thoughts this week. As I said at the beginning, music is an area of deficiency for me. I don't want to push myself off as something that I'm not, and I'm not a musician, as I have confessed periodically. But I love to sing to God. I love my cat here. Everybody say hi to my cat. I love to sing to God, and I love to worship through music. So take a swing at it this week. I got a lot of passion about these two questions. I'm looking forward to your thoughts as well. God bless y'all.